Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the American Revolution today. But we're going beyond the usual, textbook stuff. We're
Yeah.
going to explore it through the eyes of the people who actually lived it.
Yeah.
And to do that, we're using a fascinating book as our source. It's a collection of imagined interviews with key figures from both sides of the conflict.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so picture this: having a conversation with George Washington,
Okay.
or even like King George III. That's the kind of experience we're going for today.
That's a really cool concept.
It is.
So it's not just about dates and battles, right?
Yeah.
It's more about the human side of it, all
Oh,
their
yeah.
motivations, their doubts, the triumphs, and even the humor that shaped this pivotal moment.
Exactly. And this book does a fantastic job of bringing those human elements to the forefront. It features a really diverse cast of characters: American revolutionaries, British leaders, you've got Native American chiefs, French allies, all sharing their unique perspectives. And get this, there's even a fictional roundtable discussion where they all come together and debate the events of the revolution.
Wow. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really creative way to explore history.
What I find really fascinating is how the book manages to blend historical fact with imaginative storytelling. It gives us a deeper understanding, I think, of the people behind the events.
Yeah,
It's one thing to read about the Declaration of Independence in a textbook,
right.
but it's quite another to hear Thomas Jefferson grapple with the contradictions of liberty and slavery in his own words.
Oh, that's such a great point. And speaking of grappling with contradictions, let's start with George Washington.
Yeah.
The book reveals this incredible transformation that he went through, going from a loyal British subject to the leader of the rebellion. What factors do you think contributed to this shift?
Well, at first, Washington actually admired the British. He served as a British officer during the French and Indian War, fought alongside them, even expressed, fondness for those redcoats. But the seeds of his disillusionment, they were planted during that conflict. He saw the brutality of warfare firsthand, especially the practice of scalping, which really disturbed him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that experience, it kind of foreshadows his later aversion to the excesses of the revolution itself. He becomes this leader who's trying to build a strong nation, but also safeguard against tyranny. And that's a delicate balance that we still see playing out in our political debates today.
Absolutely. Washington saw firsthand the dangers of unchecked power, and he really wanted to create a system of government that balanced individual liberty with collective security. His worries about the new nation, its fragility, the potential for tyranny, they're as relevant today as they were back then.
Yeah. And speaking of balancing conflicting ideals, let's move on to Benjamin Franklin, the master diplomat, right? He played such a crucial role in getting French support for the revolution. It's incredible to think that he was harboring doubts about the whole thing succeeding, while at the same time, he was convincing this foreign power to back it.
Yeah. He was basically selling the French a dream, a vision of a free America that was far from certain.
Wow.
Yeah, he really played up American bravery, downplayed any setbacks, and he strategically used his wit and his storytelling ability to win over the French.
It almost sounds like a modern-day public relations campaign.
Yeah, kind of, shaping perceptions, influencing opinion.
Totally.
Franklin he understood the power of narrative, of persuasion. He knew that to get the French on their side, he had to create a story that would resonate with their values and interests.
And on that note about resonating with values, the book reveals this really fascinating insight into Franklin's personal regrets. He wishes he had done more to address the issue of slavery. It's a moral stain that he acknowledges, even in these fictional interviews.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even the most brilliant minds of the time were still grappling with these deeply flawed systems. And that progress, well, it's rarely a straight line.
That's true. And yet, despite these weighty issues, Franklin, he still manages to keep his trademark wit. He leaves us with this little piece of wisdom that feels surprisingly relevant today. Never underestimate the power of a good cookie.
That's so Franklin. But it's insightful, too. It shows that he understood human nature,
Right.
Sometimes just building relationships and fostering goodwill can be just as effective as grand pronouncements or even military might.
I like that.
Like a small gesture of kindness, it can go a long way in diplomacy.
It's a reminder that the personal touch, it matters, even in matters of state. Now let's dive into the complexities of Thomas Jefferson, a man of brilliant contradictions, wouldn't you say? The book really highlights his eloquent words on liberty and equality, while at the same time directly confronting his ownership of slaves.
Yeah, that's a paradox that continues to fascinate and trouble historians.
Hmm.
Jefferson understood the moral implications of slavery. He called it a moral stain,
Right.
yet he continued to benefit from the institution.
It's almost like his actions didn't align with his ideals. He writes about universal rights, but he owns human beings. How do we reconcile that?
It's a question historians are still grappling with. Some argue that he was a product of his time, trapped in a system he couldn't escape.
Okay.
Others point to his hypocrisy, emphasizing the gap between his words and his actions. The book doesn't shy away from these complexities. It presents Jefferson as this flawed figure wrestling with his own contradictions.
And even when he's trying to expand the nation, those contradictions are still there. Like, he believed in limited government, yet he orchestrates the Louisiana Purchase, a really bold move that dramatically expanded federal power.
Right. Jefferson justified the Louisiana Purchase as an act of pragmatism. He saw it as necessary for the nation's security, its prosperity. He envisioned this empire of liberty, but the true meaning of liberty, it was still a work in progress.
It's such a powerful example of how ideals often clash with the realities of the world. Jefferson's Empire of Liberty raises some interesting questions about the very nature of freedom and of expansion. How do you think his actions shaped the future of the nation?
Well, the Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the United States, right?
Yeah.
So it opened up all this land for exploration and settlement. It also set the stage for a westward expansion, which would have this huge impact on the nation's economy, its politics, its relationship with Native American tribes.
And that westward expansion, with all its complexities and challenges, it leads us to another really key figure in the Revolution, John Adams. A man known for his fiery personality, his unwavering advocacy for independence. But beneath that fiery exterior, the book reveals a man who is consumed by worry and fear.
Yes, Adams was deeply concerned about the future of the nation.
Right.
The challenges of building a stable republic, worried about divisions within the country, external threats, the potential for tyranny.
It's interesting, though, how those anxieties actually fueled his determination. He channeled those fears into action. He became this tireless advocate for independence, a key figure in shaping the new nation.
He was really pivotal in drafting the Declaration of Independence, arguing for that clean break from British rule. And during the war, he served as a diplomat, securing those crucial loans and alliances that really helped the American cause.
And speaking of crucial alliances, we can't forget Abigail Adams.
Oh, of course.
John's wife, and really his intellectual equal. Their letters reveal this deep love, this respect between them. But the book suggests that John actually regretted not giving Abigail a more public role in the Revolution.
That's right. Adams admired Abigail's intelligence, her political savvy, but the social norms of the time really limited her involvement in public life.
Makes you wonder what she could have achieved if she'd been given the opportunity. Her letters show this sharp mind, a deep understanding of the political issues of the day.
Absolutely. She was a strong advocate for women's rights, for education, and her correspondence with John, it gives us this really valuable insight into the social and political dynamics of the time.
Her Remember the Ladies' Letter is a classic.
Yes.
Urging John to consider the rights of women when forming the new government.
Right.
It's a testament to her vision, her commitment to equality.
It reminds us that the revolution wasn't just about political independence, but also about social change, the expansion of rights for everyone.
And that fight for social change, it often meant navigating complex relationships, political rivalries. The book touches upon the breakdown of John's friendship with Thomas Jefferson,
Right.
fueled by their very different political views.
Their rivalry really shaped the early years of the Republic. Adams, representing the Federalist Party, advocating for that strong central government, and Jefferson leading the Democratic Republican Party, favoring states' rights and a more limited government.
It's fascinating how those early clashes still mirror the debates we have today.
Yeah.
It shows how personal and political battles reflect the bigger questions about the nature of the nation.
Absolutely. Their rivalry speaks to the tension inherent in building a democratic society, the balance between individual liberty and collective responsibility, the role of government, the distribution of power. These are themes that, like you say, they still resonate in American politics.
It's amazing, even these founding fathers, these larger-than-life figures, they were grappling with the same human emotions and challenges that we face today. And speaking of challenges, let's move on to Alexander Hamilton, a man whose story is just its ambition, brilliance, and ultimately tragedy.
Yeah, Hamilton's story is incredible. To rise from an orphaned Caribbean boy to become Washington's right-hand man, it's remarkable. The book really captures his energy, his, his intellect, but also the complexities of his relationship with Washington. He was often impatient, ambitious, and sometimes clashed with Washington's more cautious approach.
It sounds like a classic clash of personalities. You've got the seasoned general and then this brilliant but sometimes impulsive young aide. What do you think kept them working together despite those clashes?
Well, I think Washington recognized Hamilton's genius, saw his potential. He also understood the need for different perspectives in his inner circle. Hamilton might have pushed the boundaries sometimes, but Washington valued his strategic thinking, his ability to get things done.
And Hamilton clearly respected Washington, like viewed him as a mentor, maybe even a father figure.
Yeah, definitely. Despite their differences, there was a deep mutual respect there and a shared commitment to the cause of American independence.
And that commitment to building a strong nation, it continued after the war. But Hamilton's vision for America, it differed quite a bit from Jefferson's. He was a champion for strong central government, a national bank, a more industrialized economy, ideas that were, they were pretty radical at the time.
Oh yeah, very much so. Hamilton saw a strong federal government as absolutely essential to national unity, and economic growth. And of course, his vision clashed with Jefferson's more agrarian ideal, which led to, the formation of the first political parties and set the stage for these debates about the role of government that honestly continue to this day.
It's so interesting how those early debates still shape our political landscape today. Do you think we're still seeing echoes of Hamilton's and Jefferson's visions in modern American politics?
Oh, absolutely. That tension between federal power and states' rights, between a more centralized versus decentralized economic system.
Right.
These are enduring questions that still shape American political discourse.
Makes you realize that history isn't just about the past. It's a conversation that's still going on.
Exactly. And understanding those historical roots can give us some really valuable insight into the challenges we face today.
And speaking of challenges, Hamilton's personal life, it was far from smooth sailing. The book doesn't shy away from his flaws, including his confession of adultery, an act that almost destroyed his career, really strained his marriage.
It's right. The book explores the complexities of his character. His brilliance, yes, his ambition, but also his recklessness, his tendency to make impulsive decisions. The adultery scandal reveals a more human side to this, to this figure who's often mythologized.
And that human side is really on full display in his account of the duel with Aaron Burr, a tragic end to a brilliant but ultimately flawed life. What insights does the book offer into Hamilton's mindset leading up to that duel?
Well, the book portrays him as deeply conflicted. He recognizes that the duel is foolish, but he feels trapped by those social codes of honor that dictated these kinds of encounters. He doesn't regret defending his honor, but he does lament the outcome, leaving his family fatherless, cutting his own life short.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be swayed by the pressures of society, the expectations of their time.
Absolutely. And it highlights the tragic consequences of a culture that valued honor above reason, above peaceful resolution.
It's a sobering reminder of the human cost of pride and the importance of finding ways to resolve conflict without resorting to violence.
Speaking of human cost, while we've been focusing on these big names, these prominent figures,
Right.
the book also sheds light on the experiences of those who don't always make it into the history books. Figures like Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, John Hancock, Nathaniel Greene, Marquis de Lafayette, Henry Knox, Paul Revere, Ethan Allen, all of whom played really vital roles in the Revolution.
They're like a whole tapestry of stories woven together to create this grand historical narrative. What stands out to you about some of these lesser-known figures?
Well, take Samuel Adams, for example. He emerges as this master of persuasion,
Okay.
a man who understood the power of public opinion, the importance of building relationships. He organized protests, wrote fiery pamphlets, rallied the colonists to the cause.
Sounds like he really understood the power of grassroots movements and the importance of getting ordinary people involved in the political process.
Exactly. He recognized that revolutions aren't just won on battlefields. They're won in the hearts and minds of the people.
And then you have Patrick Henry, the firebrand, right? Give me liberty or give me death.
Oh, yeah.
That speech became a rallying cry for independence. The book shows us the passion, the conviction behind those words. It's a reminder of the fierce spirit that drove the revolution.
Henry's words really capture the essence of that struggle for freedom, the willingness to risk everything for liberty. He was a powerful orator. He knew how to connect with people's emotions, their aspirations.
It's a reminder of the power of words to inspire, to mobilize people for a cause.
And then there's John Hancock, the wealthy merchant who signed the Declaration of Independence with that big, bold signature.
Yes.
The book portrays him as a shrewd businessman who saw an opportunity to overthrow tyranny, but maybe also to, advance his own interests.
Yeah.
He understood the power of wealth and influence.
It's interesting how the book shows these figures with all their complexities, their contradictions. They're
Yeah.
not just heroes or villains. They're human beings with a mix of motivations and ambitions.
Exactly. And that complexity makes them even more fascinating to learn about.
Absolutely. And speaking of fascinating figures, let's talk about Nathaniel Greene, the brilliant strategist who really saved the Southern campaign. He's often overshadowed by Washington, but the book highlights his tactical genius and the importance of adapting to the unique challenges of fighting in the South.
Greene understood the need to be flexible, to tailor his strategies to the terrain, to the enemy he was facing. He was a master of logistics. He kept his army supplied and mobile, even though he was facing a larger, more powerful force.
It's a reminder that military success isn't just about brute force, but about intelligence, adaptability, strategic thinking.
And speaking of strategic thinking, we can't forget about Henry Knox, the book-loving artillery officer who hauled cannons across frozen landscapes to change the course of the war. That was a feat of logistics and sheer willpower.
It's incredible to think about the challenges they faced back then. Transporting heavy cannons across hundreds of miles in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
It must have been an unbelievable undertaking.
It really was. It shows Knox's determination and his understanding of how important artillery was becoming in modern warfare.
And speaking of monumental undertakings, let's not forget Paul Revere. His story is so much more than just the Midnight Ride.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a skilled artisan, a dedicated patriot, and even participated in the disastrous Penobscot expedition.
Revere's life was like a microcosm of the revolution itself, full of daring acts, setbacks, unexpected twists of fate. He was a man of action, always willing to put himself on a line for the cause.
And then there's Ethan Allen, another larger-than-life figure, leader of the Green Mountain Boys, whose capture of Fort Ticonderoga in his pajamas is, well, it's legendary.
That's a great story. Allen was such a charismatic and controversial figure, frontiersman, land speculator, a fierce advocate for Vermont's independence.
It's amazing how the book gives a voice to these often overlooked figures. It reminds us that the revolution wasn't just this top-down movement led by a few famous names. It was a collective effort, ordinary people taking extraordinary actions to shape their destiny.
Exactly. It was a movement that drew on the talents and energy of a really diverse group of people, each contributing in their own way to the cause of American independence. And, it's important to remember that not everyone who participated in the revolution was on the American side. The book also explores the perspectives of those who fought for the crown, and it reveals their complexities and motivations as well.
That's right. It's easy to forget that for many colonists, the decision to support the revolution, it wasn't an easy choice. Loyalties were divided, families were torn apart, and the war brought hardship and uncertainty to so many communities.
And the book does a great job of highlighting those different perspectives. We hear from loyalist colonists who stayed loyal to the crown, British soldiers fighting to preserve the empire, and even King George III himself, expressing bewilderment and frustration at the colonists' rebellion.
It must have been such a confusing and unsettling time for those who found themselves on the opposite side of the revolution. What insights does the book offer into their experiences?
Well, for King George III, the rebellion felt like a personal betrayal. Wow. He saw himself as benevolent ruler, providing for the colonies, protecting them from their enemies. He couldn't understand why they would risk everything for what he saw as, minor grievances.
It's a reminder that history is often told from the perspective of the winner.
Yeah.
And understanding the perspectives of everyone involved, even those on the quote-unquote wrong side of history, it's essential to getting a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past.
Exactly. And by exploring those different viewpoints, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of the revolution, the challenges faced by all sides.
And speaking of challenges, let's talk about the British military leaders.
Yeah.
They faced the daunting task of putting down this rebellion. The book features interviews with generals like William Howe, Henry Clinton, Charles Cornwallis, each offering their own take on the war, their strategies for victory. What insights do they provide into the British side of the conflict?
Well, General Howe, for instance, he comes across as kind of a reluctant warrior.
Oh.
He prefers negotiation, a more measured approach. He expresses distaste for the bloodshed and seems to genuinely believe in the possibility of reconciliation. But his strategy, it ultimately proves ineffective against the determined American forces.
It's almost like his personal views clashed with the realities of war. Do you think his reluctance to engage in full-scale conflict, do you think that contributed to the British defeat?
It's certainly possible. His hesitations might have given the American forces time to regroup, strengthen their defenses, and his focus on capturing major cities like Philadelphia, it may have distracted from the need to defeat the Continental Army out in the field.
It's a reminder that military strategy isn't just about tactics and logistics, but also about psychology, about the will to fight.
And talking about the will to fight, General Clinton, who inherits this war that's already going badly, he's left trying to salvage what he can. He focuses on the South, hoping to exploit Loyalist support, but ultimately faces that disastrous defeat at Yorktown.
Sounds like he was handed a really tough situation.
He was.
What factors do you think contributed to the British failure in the South?
Well, one factor was definitely overestimating Loyalist support. While there were colonists who remained loyal to the Crown, they weren't as numerous or as organized as the British had hoped.
And the American forces in the South, under Nathaniel Greene, they proved to be a lot more resilient and resourceful than the British expected.
Exactly. Greene's ability to adapt to the terrain, to engage in guerrilla warfare, to keep his army supplied, despite facing a superior force, it played a crucial role in frustrating the British campaign in the South.
And of course, the French alliance was a decisive factor in the American victory.
Oh, absolutely.
Providing crucial military and financial support.
Yeah. The French entry into the war really shifted the balance of power. It gave the Americans the resources and manpower they needed to defeat the British.
And speaking of shifting the balance of power, we can't forget the role of Native American tribes in the Revolution. The book highlights the complex and often tragic experiences of Native Americans who were caught in the middle of this conflict. Their stories are often overlooked in traditional narratives of the Revolution, but they're so important to understanding the full scope of the war and its consequences.
I completely agree. Native American tribes were forced to choose sides, often based on their existing alliances and their assessment of which side offered the best chance for survival. And those decisions often had devastating consequences, leading to displacement, violence, the erosion of their sovereignty.
It's a reminder that the Revolution wasn't just a conflict between two European powers. It was a multi-sided war with far-reaching implications for Native American communities throughout the colonies.
Exactly. And it's important to recognize the diversity of experiences within Native American communities because different tribes made different choices based on their own circumstances and their own priorities.
The book features interviews with several Native American leaders, each offering their perspective on the war and its impact on their people. Can you tell us a bit more about some of their stories?
Sure. Well, for example, Joseph Brant, the Mohawk chief, he talks about the difficult decision to side with the British.
Okay.
A choice driven by a complex web of alliances, territorial disputes, and a deep distrust of the American colonists. He saw the British as the best hope for protecting his people's land, their way of life, from encroachment.
It's a reminder that for many Native Americans, the Revolution wasn't about choosing between liberty and tyranny. It was about choosing the least bad option in a conflict that threatened their very existence.
That's a great way to put it. And Brandt's story highlights the strategic calculations, the difficult choices faced by Native American leaders as they tried to navigate this treacherous situation.
And then there's Cornstalk, the Shawnee chief, who shares his tragic story. Fighting in Dunmore's War, signing a peace treaty, and then ultimately being murdered at Fort Randolph while trying to maintain peaceful relations. It's a heartbreaking example of the broken promises and betrayals that marked this era.
Cornstalk's story is a testament to his commitment to peace, his willingness to negotiate with the Americans, even after suffering defeat in Dunmore's War. But his faith in diplomacy was misplaced, and he became a victim of the violence and paranoia that gripped the frontier during the Revolution.
It's a reminder of the human cost of war, not just in terms of, casualties on the battlefield, but in the erosion of trust, the breakdown of peaceful relations.
And it really highlights the vulnerability of Native American communities caught in the crossfire of a conflict they didn't start.
And speaking of vulnerability, the book also sheds light on the experiences of other groups who are often marginalized in traditional accounts of the revolution: women, enslaved people, loyalists. What insights do their stories offer into the broader social and political landscape of the era?
Well, for example, the book has interviews with women who played a variety of roles in the revolution, supporting the war effort through fundraising, supplying troops, acting as spies. Some even took up arms themselves. Their stories show the resilience and resourcefulness of women in the face of these wartime challenges, and their growing awareness of their own rights and capabilities.
It's a reminder that the revolution wasn't just a fight for political independence, but also a catalyst for social change, the expansion of rights for marginalized groups.
Exactly. And while the gains for women and other marginalized groups were often incremental and hard-won, the revolution did open up new possibilities for challenging traditional hierarchies, demanding greater equality.
And the stories of enslaved people during the revolution they're particularly poignant. They really highlight the hypocrisy of fighting for liberty while at the same time perpetuating the institution of slavery.
That's right. The book features interviews with enslaved people who fought on both sides of the conflict, some seeking freedom by joining the British forces, others supporting the American cause, hoping that victory would bring an end to slavery.
It's a complex and often tragic aspect of the revolution, that dissonance between the ideals of liberty and the realities of slavery.
And it's a reminder that the struggle for freedom and equality is an ongoing process, one that continues to this day.
Hmm.
The revolution may have secured independence for the American colonies, but it didn't erase the deep-seated inequalities that persisted in American society.
And speaking of ongoing struggles, the book also delves into the experiences of loyalists, those colonists who remained loyal to the crown throughout the revolution. Their stories offer a counterpoint to the dominant narrative of American patriotism, reminding us that the revolution was a divisive conflict, one that split communities and families.
Absolutely. Loyalists faced persecution, exile, the confiscation of their property, all because of their beliefs. Their stories offer a glimpse into the human cost of revolution and the challenges of reconciliation in the aftermath of such a divisive conflict.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of revolution, there are always multiple perspectives, multiple loyalties, multiple interpretations of events.
And understanding those complexities is essential to gaining a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the lives and experiences of such a diverse cast of characters who shaped the American Revolution, from the founding fathers to to the unsung heroes, from the British generals to the Native American leaders, from the women and enslaved people who challenged traditional hierarchies to the loyalists who remained faithful to the crown. We've gotten a glimpse into the human drama that unfolded during this pivotal era.
And through their stories, we've seen how the revolution wasn't just about political independence, but also about ideas, about ideals, about the nature of freedom, and the struggle to create a more just and equitable society.
And while the revolution might have ended over 2 centuries ago, its legacies continue to resonate with us today. Those ideals of liberty, equality, self-government that fueled the revolution, they continue to inspire us and challenge us as we wrestle with the complex issues of our own time.
Absolutely. The American Revolution wasn't just a historical event. It was a transformative moment that shaped the course of history and continues to influence how we see ourselves as a nation.
And as we dig deeper into the source material, we'll keep uncovering new insights and perspectives, gaining a richer and more nuanced understanding of this chapter in American history.
I'm looking forward to exploring those insights with you.
It's amazing how this book, really brings the American Revolution to life. It's not just about memorizing dates and battles and stuff.
Right.
It's about understanding the motivations, the decisions of real people, both the famous ones and those who are often forgotten.
Yeah, and what I find really captivating is how the book weaves together all these different voices. We've heard from the founding fathers, military leaders, Native American chiefs, even ordinary colonists caught in the middle of it all. It creates this much more nuanced picture of the revolution than we typically get.
Absolutely. And it challenges us to think about the revolution from multiple perspectives. Like we often focus on the American side, the fight for liberty and independence and all that.
Right.
But hearing from the British leaders, understanding their bewilderment, their frustration,
Mhm.
it adds a whole other layer of complexity to the story.
A British perspective.
Yeah.
It often gets overlooked, but it's so crucial to grasping the full context of the conflict.
Yeah.
Imagine being King George III, right? You see yourself as this benevolent ruler you're providing for your colonies,
Right.
and suddenly they're in open rebellion against you.
It must have felt like a total betrayal, especially considering the British had just fought this costly war, to protect the colonies from the French.
Exactly. The British perspective reminds us that history is rarely black and white,
Yeah.
There are valid arguments on both sides. And understanding those arguments helps us see the revolution not as this simple good versus evil narrative,
Right.
but as a complex human drama with real people making difficult choices.
And it's a drama with far-reaching consequences, especially for Native American communities. Their stories, so often pushed to the side, they're given a really powerful voice in this book.
The Native American perspective is essential to understanding the true impact of the revolution. These communities were stuck in the middle of a conflict that wasn't theirs, forced to choose sides, often with devastating results.
Joseph Brant, the Mohawk leader who sided with the British, he makes a compelling case for his decision. He saw the Americans as a direct threat to his people's land and way of life. It's a stark reminder that the revolution for many Native Americans wasn't about some abstract idea of liberty. It was about survival.
Exactly. And Cornstalk's tragic story, it just underscores the terrible consequences of broken promises, the escalating violence on the frontier, his murder at Fort Randolph. It's a heartbreaking example of the human cost of the revolution and how it extended far beyond the actual battlefields.
These stories, they challenge us to think critically about the revolution's legacy. It wasn't this clean break from oppression. It was messy, complex.
Right.
It led to freedom for some, while making things even harder for others.
That's a crucial point. The revolution wasn't just this single event with a single outcome. It was a process, and it had ripples that spread across generations, across continents even.
And those ripples, they still affect us today. The debates we have about the power of the government, individual rights, the role of protest, these are all echoes of the questions that were being raised during the revolution.
Absolutely. Understanding the revolution isn't just about remembering the past. It's about engaging with the present. It's about recognizing that these ideas have enduring power, that social change is complex, and that the struggle to truly live up to those ideals of liberty and equality, it's ongoing.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, that's for sure. It's made me appreciate the complexities of history, how interconnected everything is, and how important it is to hear those diverse voices, those different perspectives. What about you? What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from our exploration today?
For me, it's the reminder that history is made by people, just like us. They had their flaws, their contradictions, their moments of brilliance, and their moments of despair. And by trying to understand their stories, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world we live in today.
I couldn't agree more. This book has turned history into a conversation, a dialogue across time, and I really hope our listeners feel inspired to continue that conversation, to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and to keep searching for those hidden voices and untold stories that enrich our understanding of the past.
Well said. There's always more to discover, more perspectives to consider, more connections to make between then and now.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the American Revolution, I encourage all of you listening to keep exploring, keep digging, dive into primary sources, read letters and diaries, visit historical sites. Imagine yourself having a conversation with the people who lived through this extraordinary period in history.
And as you explore, remember that history is not just a bunch of facts and dates. It's a tapestry of human experiences. It's a story that's still unfolding, and we're all a part of it.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the American Revolution. We hope you've gained a new appreciation for the complexities of history, the power of ideas, and the importance of hearing those diverse voices. Until next time.